Thanks for joining me on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm super excited about this one because I have to say I have been a fan of St. Olaf since I started watching you guys last year, and I thought you were a special team playing a very good style of soccer. So that warmed my sensibilities. And so really thankful that you took the time.
I appreciate that a lot. Very excited to be here, and appreciate all you do for D3 Soccer.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, so I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, let's just clear the tape. This is really difficult for me. This is very tough for me. Wearing this hat is extremely difficult for me. Anyone with any Ohio Wesleyan connection, I am traumatized by you guys. I said it to Jay in the past. 1986, freshman year, playing this team. I'm a kid from New Jersey playing in Ohio. Hear about this great team, Ohio Wesleyan. Actually go down to play you guys. Actually doing really well as a goalkeeper. And I come out for a ball and on the ground, grab the ball, and one of your fellow battling bishops of a bygone era just so happens to confuse my head with the soccer ball, knocks me unconscious. And so I blame you guys for a lot of things. Whenever there's something that goes wrong, I blame the battling bishops. And I actually partially blame you guys for this channel because of the insanity that has ensued. So yeah.
Well, I'm happy if that's what led to this channel. Then I'm very happy that an Ohio Wesleyan player kicked you in the head.
Yeah. I don't remember my name, but I did this channel, so that's all good. Hey, if I read this right, this is your fourth year or fifth year? I can never because
I just finished my fourth fall season. We had three because of the COVID year.
Yeah.
Just entered year 5.
Okay. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about your soccer experience. How did you end up at St. Olaf?
Yeah. So I guess I'll rewind to where I went to college. So you're sporting the hat. I was able to play at Ohio Wesleyan from 2008. Graduated in 2012. The final season there was the fall of 2011, where we had a great year and won the national championship, which was awesome. After that season, was able to get invited to have some opportunities to play after and try out for some teams. So at the time, it was Minnesota Stars was the name out here. And that is present day Minnesota United. So came out here for a week tryout and did good enough to get invited back, and ended up making the team. So moved to Minnesota and I used the term play loosely because I didn't really play very much, but I got to play at the time it was the NASL. Which in the structure was MLS, NASL, USL. Now the NASL doesn't exist anymore. But had a great time for 2 years playing. But while I was doing that, I was also began my coaching career as an assistant coach at St. Thomas. Right when the head coach there, John Lowry, had just taken over the program, and had a really fun 2 years with him. And I loved Minnesota. And the only reason I left was because my playing career was over after 2 years. So went back to Ohio, worked at Xavier for one fall season. Then I went back to Ohio Wesleyan and helped Jay out for a few years. And the reason I brought up the stuff I just did was because I don't think had I not played out here and lived out here, I don't think the name St. Olaf would have been. It wouldn't have registered on my radar, but those 2 years I spent out here, I remember the campus. I had nothing but fond memories of what a nice place it was, and it kind of checked every box for me. from an employer standpoint. My boss here, he's in his 8th year now, but he's done. I don't think he gets enough credit. I think St. Olaf as a whole, the reputation that I was told when I got this job was, they're pretty good at everything. And if they ever really went all in on sports, they'd be really good at a lot of things. And in the last 8 years, we built a $1.25 million soccer-only facility, a $9 million ice arena.
Yeah.
They redid the basketball floor, new golf simulators, new varsity athlete weight room. He's done amazing things and put the infrastructure in place. I felt that on my interview out here. And, I really enjoyed my time at Ohio Wesleyan. I had a good thing going with coaching there and getting to coach some really good club teams. And it was always going to take something really impactful. And I felt special for me to want to leave there. And St. Olaf checked all those boxes. And 5 years later, here I am. And I'm as I reflect on that, I'm just very happy that made that move. Loved my time there, but the last 5 years at St. Olaf have been some of the most rewarding I've had professionally.
Were you at St. Thomas before they went Division I?
Yeah, way before.
Yeah. Okay.
2012 and 13. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I know that they changed over.
Yep.
2 years ago, 3
Yep,
years.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So they were Division III at the time.
Yep.
Let me ask you, because you obviously a high level player, you didn't play for the Stars, and I thought did you get a trial with the Columbus Crew?
Yeah, so I played with the Columbus Crew Academy in the inaugural year of it, and we were a really good team. And I think just because Ohio Wesleyan is close to Columbus, I had a pretty good career at OU. They invited me in for preseason, and didn't make the team, but it was pretty awesome. I mean, I'm a huge Columbus Crew fan. Just getting to spend 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was, with guys I grew up cheering for was pretty surreal. And still to this day, my claim to fame is that I won the beep test when I was in preseason with them. And some Columbus Dispatch writer wrote an article about it, or it wasn't an article; it was a little blurb about it, but. That is still to this day, I think, one of my proudest accomplishments.
I know some people who are in MLS and whatever. I should ask if your name is somewhere in their training facility.
I highly doubt it. But I won the beep test. Couldn't kick a ball to save my life for 3 weeks, but I won the beep test. That's what I had on.
Wait, so I just want to clarify for people who are watching this. You weren't just a pretty good player. You were, was it 3-time, 4-time All-American?
I was a
player of
two-time.
the year, 2-time player of the year.
Yep.
So at Ohio Wesleyan,
Yep.
which is a remarkable accomplishment, and I just didn't want people to think, oh, it's another guy who can't play, so he coaches. No, you were the bee's knees, that's for sure.
I appreciate that a lot.
All right, so you have an interesting perspective because of that high level and your coaching journey and how that all started out. And you've got, Xavier Division I, really, good program. You were Ohio Wesleyan, obviously, and now St. Olaf for the last 5 years. So let me ask you something from your perspective and all of that experience. Do you think players in this 10 years, 12 years that you've been doing this, or actually longer, that players have gotten better or are either technically or just more aware of the game or any of that from the days that when you were playing at this level?
On the whole, yes. I do believe that. I played on 4 really good teams when I was playing for Jay. And that's kind of what I knew about Division III soccer when I left. And I oftentimes compare the teams I coach at St. Olaf to those teams just to try to get a measuring stick. And, I really feel like not just us, but the teams we play against as well are just better on the whole. I mean, my good friend and my old assistant coach when I played at Ohio Wesleyan, Brandon Bianco.
Oh, yeah.
Him and I talk often about how like the days of just being able to roll out of bed and win 15 games pretty easily are over. Just I think the level of coaching has gotten a lot better. I think the level of players gotten a lot better, and you got to work for everything a little bit more than you probably used to have to.
Yeah, that's true about the coaching as well. I think just the younger generations that have come through have just sort of been exposed to different aspects of the game that, again, back in the 80s, it was, you learned what you learned from your coaches, but now you could learn from so many different places and watch totally crazy amount of games on TV and over the internet that we never had a chance.
For sure.
Hey, since you raised Coach Bianco, he traumatizes me as well. Like, I'm just saying, it's not just you. It's, another battling bishop. That's how influential, because everyone I talk to says, like, you can't say enough about how impactful he was. But how important was Jay Martin at Ohio Wesleyan for your development as a coach?
Oh, I don't know, infinite. I mean, I kind of felt like I always wanted to go into coaching, which was a reason why I wanted to go to Ohio Wesleyan, because I knew at that time, I mean, it's crazy. At that time, Jay's big marketing thing, or that his assistants marketed about him, was that he was the fastest coach to 500 wins. Yeah. And then I was there as a player for win 600, and then there as an assistant coach for win 700.
700,
so
yeah.
It's pretty crazy how much he's done. But, I think philosophically he's rubbed off in a big way on not just me, but the other guys that have played for him that have gotten into coaching. And I think a big reason why we've decided to go into coaching is because of the experience we had playing for him. And, when I reflect on my time as a student athlete at Ohio Wesleyan, obviously very grateful to get to play for Jay, but also to have Brandon as the associate head coach for my time there. Like, that doesn't happen at too many Division III places where you get, the all-time greatest coach, and then, someone who is obviously doing great things like Brandon is, and that's a big reason why we were good.
Yeah. Not to undercut what Brandon's all about, because he's another one that just totally impresses me about how he wants to play and what he expects out of his program. Just turning this a little bit, well, maybe you could give me your impressions of the MIAC, the Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. Competitiveness, again, especially for folks who tend to focus a lot on the East Coast conferences, just because it's a lot easier to track.
Yeah, it's a fun conference. It's the first conference that I have coached or played in that has 6 teams that make the conference tournament. So that adds a layer of chaos in the final week, because typically everybody's playing for a spot in the playoffs still, or for their seed in, or playing for a home game or whatever it may be. I mean, you look at last year, for example, because we have an odd number of teams, there's always a team that doesn't play. And in my opinion, we got the absolute worst bye week, which was the final Saturday of the regular season. Yeah. So we finished playing Augsburg on a Wednesday in a pretty just insane, awesome game, insanely great game. And then we had to wait for the games to play on a Saturday to see if we were going to be the 2 or the 3 seed. So that, and then there's other versions of other teams waiting to see, like, if we tie, if we win, where are we going to be? Will we make it? But I think there's, from top to bottom, it is a really competitive conference. And you get a little bit of everything in terms of the way that teams play. But there aren't that many easy games. I think where you play teams is really important. There's certainly turf teams, and we're one of them, that I think when you get us on grass, it's advanced. It plays into your hands a little bit. St. Mary's is in Winona, and they haven't had a great conference record the last 2 years, but they play on actually the opposite of
Turf.
long
Yeah.
of long thick grass. They play on like I don't know 12 or 13-year-old turf that is the fastest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I feel like the ball's out of bounds more than it's inbounds,
Yeah.
and it's 2.5 hours away from most of the places, so it just presents different traveling like variables. So from top to bottom, it is a fun conference. You get to do a little bit of traveling, but all within reason. And you're typically always playing for something up until the final day. So I think that just presents a lot of fun and a lot of chaos.
Just so you know, I talked to Coach Holker from Augsburg
Yep.
last week, and he had mentioned that he would like to play you guys home and away for the entire season. So 9 home games, 9 away games, because he said that 3-3 tie was just absolutely that was probably the best game he was involved in.
I mean, it was pretty awesome. I mean, in the first 15 minutes, it kind of sucked because we were down 2-0.
Yeah.
And honestly, like we hadn't been down like that in the last couple of years. And we played pretty hard schedules. I think this last year we either had the hardest non-conference schedule in the country or a top 3 or 4 non-conference. And
I think so.
You know, I asked my guys at the end of the year, like, hey, who was the best team that you guys played this year that you guys felt? And I mean, the easy answer is Chicago, right? They undefeated national champs, and they do take that cake. But you know, one of the more interesting answers I got from one of my players was if you removed the uniform of who you were playing and didn't pay attention to the name and based it only on how you felt they played against you on that night, Augsburg actually got more votes than people would imagine. I mean, they're fantastic, and I think they were just kind of nipped a little bit too much by dropping points and ties, and some uncharacteristic games on the road and tough circumstances. But they are a fantastic team that wins a lot of games. They're capable of beating anyone, as they showed last year. I mean, they beat Eau Claire, one of only 2 teams in the regular season to do that. Conceded with like 7 seconds left or something like that in a very interesting end of their game with Gustavus. They gave up a goal with 3 minutes against us, down a man. I mean, they were minutes away from having an entirely different season. And I'll say I did not want to play them again in the MIAC tournament. So it was just weird because they were, I think if you interviewed any other coaches in our conference, I think all of us would say that we felt they were a top 3-4 team. And they returned almost everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. I think one. Yeah, I think he said 1 or 3.
And some of the guys they lose are certainly influential,
right.
But they also return some of the best players in the conference. So they're good every year, and it'll be fun to go against them again.
I'm gonna watch when my schedule frees up here this week. I'm gonna watch some of the games because, I was really impressed with him and how the program and at least how he enunciated how he likes to play.
Yeah,
and I thought that was like, okay, so I now have to sort of invest a lot more time.
Oh, they have a very committed style of play that is very ball dominant and pass oriented and great combination play in the attacking third. And it was funny, leading up to their game, I talked to him every week just about whatever's going on, and we did a prediction for what the score of our game would be, and we guessed it was going to end like 5-5. So 3-3 was a lot, but we both attack a lot, and both are on set pieces.
You guys too, right? Not to talk all about Augsburg, but I mean, I watch you guys, and I think your intuition is to go on the attack at all times, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're up and there's no, you could slow it down if you want it. No, you're going. Like, it's this sort of in your DNA almost.
Yeah, very much so. And part of it is definitely has to do with the fact that I was an attacker when I played, and I love attacking, and I love coaching attacking-minded players. I would say that I could probably use a dose of a defensive side of things to level us out a little bit, but and I feel like every time we get the ball, and we cross midfield, we are a threat to score. And I feel like every time our opponent gets the ball and counters us, they are a threat to score. So they're pretty nerve-wracking games. But, when I mentioned earlier that I like to compare our teams to some of the teams that I played on at Ohio Wesleyan, just as a measuring stick. And, our team that won the national championship does not fit the criteria of what I think a lot of teams put in the mold of national champion, which is like they don't concede goals, they just defend. And when you have so many NESCAC teams win championships that kind of fit that mold, it makes sense. But we scored like 78 goals that year. We conceded about a goal a game. And part of the reason why we gave up goals is because of how we attacked. And we just said, all right, we're going to outscore each team we play. And I think inherently I kind of carry that DNA with me where, and even if we go down a goal, it doesn't really faze us because in the last 2 years, like we've only been shut out once, and it was against North Park in the Sweet 16. And we just feel like we like our chances to score. We have some really good players who have really good ideas on how to break teams down. And more often than not, they're successful doing it.
I think, right, the truth of it, I mean, if you're going to choose I don't want to say the most risk, but what's the side of the ball that you always want to be on? I'd rather be in a position to score goals. Like I do this weird exercise where I look at I look at a position and I say, what are all the decisions that this position needs to make, and come out with 30, 50 decisions from order of importance to not, and they all start, except for the goalkeeper, score a goal.
Yep.
So,
I'm the same way. Ironically, I was talking to some of the guys on my team this week. Obviously, Jesse Marsh is out at Leeds, and we started talking about who would we want to coach the national team, and I said, would you rather have Bielsa or Jesse Marsh? Number of them said Jesse Marsh, and they cited Bielsa conceding a lot of goals as the reason why, and I said, well. They also score a lot of goals, and don't forget that is our DNA too. We score a lot of goals, and we concede probably too much too.
Hey, just really broadly, where do you recruit? What are your main area to recruit from? And do you compete with other teams for? Are you like in a competitive marketplace for players?
So we're pretty geographically diverse team. A quick glance at our roster would tell you that like a third of our team is international. A third of our team are from Minnesota, and then roughly a third of our team are from other domestic states. And I really like that breakdown. St. Olaf has a really great academic reputation that I think allows us to pull from such a wide market. And I would say within each region, I compete with similar schools. So like on the surface, I would tell you I compete with a lot of schools, but it's kind of it's unique to each region. When I recruit international student athletes, I'm recruiting against a lot of the same schools, and a lot of them are out east. A lot of the NESCACs and Centennials and whatnot. When I go west, I actually west and in Minnesota recruit against Gustavus, McAllister, Carleton, a lot of those schools.
The high academic school, right? Like
with each
higher
one.
academic.
With Carleton, McAllister, and us, I think that most people would kind of identify us as the top three academic schools in our conference. But even within that, like Carleton's like a top 10 school, and MAC is a top 30, and we're a top 50, and that's a pretty big gap. But it's still a high enough, ranking in the Division III world to appeal to really smart student athletes. So, and then with Minnesota guys, sometimes an Augsburg or a Gustavus will come in, just because I think the three of us all play pretty good soccer and are well coached and are pretty successful.
Yeah. Hey, do you this one just popped up in my head because you mentioned it. I mean, Are you intentional about the international recruiting, or is that something that because St. Olaf, there's some like admissions pipeline that you sort of piggyback on to find players?
So I'm pretty intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
My predecessor, Kurt Anderson, who was here for 30 years, lovely man who is one of our biggest fans, comes to like all of our games. He did a great job of having a good international contingent within
Mm-hmm.
our team. And when I took over, we had a couple French guys who were very, very good.
Right.
And we were fortunate where that turned into, I think, one of the best players in Division Three, and Victor
Uh-huh.
Goldman.
Oh my
His
gosh.
older brother Luca was
Oh.
here, and Luca was a hell of a player as well. But Kurt had a good international pull within the team, and
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to continue that. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I think we take different routes about how we go about it. In terms of, I go to prep schools in the Northeast quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
um, but
Yeah.
and we have a relationship with United World Colleges
Mm-hmm.
that also helps. But that's kind of the lowdown with
Okay.
how we
Yeah,
recruit
yeah.
admission students.
I was just more curious because it, like I said, some coaches are much more intentional about it. I know in some instances it's the school, right? It's the nature of the school and
Yep.
who they look to, and so I was just curious about that. All right, because we've been going off sidetracks because I'm this has been great so far, but let me go back to just the basics. What if somebody asks you, "Hey, how do you think your 2022 season went?" What do you say to them?
I would say it ended well, and it got progressively better after the first like 6 games. Um, it was each year I've been here, we've had a new challenge in front of us. So my first year, the preceding 2 years we were like 4-13 and 5-13. So my first year it was just about like, can we win more games and build some belief. And to be frank, we did it in not a fashion that I would happily send film over and say watch the way we play.
Mm-hmm.
But we needed to figure out how to win and grind some games out. And
Mm-hmm.
we went 9-9 in the regular season my first year. Made the conference tournament for the first time in 5 years, and then lost in the conference quarters. But
Mm-hmm.
overachieved by many margins. The year before we were 2-8 in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good for building some belief. Then the challenge the following year was, can we keep our roster intact in COVID?
Mm-hmm. Oh my
And
gosh,
we
yeah.
did. I mean, we had our whole team here all year, and that was almost a blessing in disguise because we got to train all year round. We got 7 friendlies in the spring. That was fantastic because we started like 9 freshmen in most of those games. And we realized, all right, we could be all right. And then the goal going into 2021 was, can we take that and put it together in a season that actually matters? And I mean, I'd be lying to you if I told you I thought we were going to go 19-3-1 in 2021.
And play with style. Like I'll
Yeah,
just
like
throw that in there. You guys were just so good.
I appreciate that. And like pragmatically, I would have guessed maybe we win 11 to 13 games that year,
Mm-hmm.
because we started 9 freshmen and sophomores like every
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
So now going into this past season, it was okay. Can we do that again? And
Mm-hmm.
that is where I have like probably the utmost respect for Jay and for coaches like Jay who have been able to do it for so long with bigger targets on your back and whatnot, where they can take other teams' best punches and still keep
Yeah.
rolling with them. And we played a really hard schedule this year, and we got off to a tough start. We were 2-3 in the first 5 games, and without any losses that are like embarrassing. We lost to Wartburg, who was good this year, lost to North Park, lost to
Yeah.
Chicago,
Yeah.
but certainly when you win 19 games the year before and you start off 2-3, I think it makes you wonder, were you just a flash in the pan? How good are you? And I think that tested us a little bit, tested me a little bit. I think I was out of my elements for a week period there, and we got it going in the right direction. And credit to all the credit to my guys who really were stabilized, and we had a really good week of practice. We were supposed to play Luther on a Wednesday, and it got canceled due to a heat rule that our conference has. And we ended up having a really good couple days of practice, and that started. The next game after was McAllister, which was arguably our best win of the year. That's a team that doesn't concede many goals at all, and we went to their place and put 4 on them, and everything just went our way that day, and that felt like we were going to start moving in the right direction. So after that, and we still had some setbacks along the way. Carleton was a loss that was tough to swallow because it was in the midst of like I think a 5 or 6 game winning streak. We took a red card in like the 20 or 23rd minute, which is a long time to play down a man when it's just
first
one
half,
person.
That's
but when
brutal.
it's also Victor, who's our 2-time All-American and pulls a lot of our strings, it was another layer to that red card that affected us. Then we got it going again. Lost a tough one at Gustavus in the regular season, but we're okay with how we played. Then we played Platteville 2 days later, and that was a great way to get back right on the bus and try to keep going. And went on the road and 3-0 win and played great. And that win was huge for us because, as is evident by our schedule, we really don't want to shy away from playing good teams, but there's only so many times you can keep going to the locker room saying we played good against this team, but we didn't win. So it was nice to go there and finally beat a good team and play really well, especially 48 hours after a really big loss. We always feel like the winner of our Gustavus game is not automatically going to win the conference, but is going to be in the driver's seat. So that was tough, but
a game like that one during the Gustavus game, the most dangerous game, in my opinion, is becomes the Platteville game, right? Because you sink so much emotion, so much effort into this big time game, and you sort of emotionally are let down. If you don't have your guard up, Platteville could do something to you that hurts you, right?
Absolutely.
And then it just sort of sets you off on a bad path, and that's
absolutely.
And aside from that North Park game, I mean, these are 1-goal games that you lost. It's not
the only asterisk I'll put in with the North Park game too is that one of their kids hit the goal of the year with 60 seconds left as we pushed everybody up. And we were trying to chase the game. It was 3-2 for the final. We made it 3-2 with 42 minutes left in the game, and it was
so you were chasing
end to end. So it felt like a 1-goal game. They got one on the score sheet late that kind of make it look different, but we were in every single game, which in some ways makes it tougher to swallow. Because you're right there, and like I said a second ago, it gets old being proud of how you play but losing. Make no mistake about it. I'm proud of the way that we play, but I'm not like a soccer purist that if we lose and play an attractive style,
head held high,
I try to get on my high horse and insult the other team. The goal is to win. We have good enough players, and I think a good enough identity that we can win a lot of games doing it the way that we want to. But if the weather's bad or we're on a crappy field, our game plan will change immediately. It's not about how many passes we connect and try to sell that. We want to win games, and that was tough at the beginning of the year not doing that.
Not doing that, yeah. I mean, I've said too, right? Your first 5-6 out of conference games, depending on how you end up, that determines the rest of your season, right? Just psychologically, right? You say you lose 3. Man, you could have easily just sort of given up. I know teams that would have just sort of been like, we can't deal with this, and just sort of throw it away, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to ask you some rule changes. So you only really had 2 ties, one in the regular season. against Augsburg, and then in against Gustavus in the NCAA's that both of those were the ties. The Gustavus obviously went to OT penalty kicks.
Yep.
Yeah, penalty kicks. The lack of overtime or the no overtimes during the regular season. I mean, net positive, net negative. Any thoughts on that?
We haven't tied that many games in my time here. We tied 0 games my first year. We tied 1 game in 2021. It was Chicago. And then last year we tied 2. So on the whole, we decide most of our games. I shouldn't say we decide. Our game is decided at the end of 90 minutes. But I absolutely miss overtime. And in 21, we were 4-0-1 in overtime games. And that had a huge bearing in winning 19 games.
Yeah.
If those end up as ties, it's different. I understand that the people who are in support of it, but I'm not one of them. I am on the national committee as well for the Division III men's tournament, and just having to sift through ties is just it's a little bit harder. And I know people will cite that. I think it was like 43% of games that went to ties were decided. So 57% still ended as ties. But I would say, okay, well, that's 43%. That's almost half of them still have a winner and loser out of it. And I am personally in favor of letting players and coaches try to find a winner on the day. I listened to my buddy Dehan with you the other day, and I don't think I could have put it any better. I feel like player wellness and health and safety is only cited when it helps an argument and not when it doesn't. And I drastically miss overtime.
I've been saying, like, this to me is, and I appreciate it, right? Like, I know the heart's in the right place and these decisions are made, but the player load argument on overtimes isn't too convincing for me, just because I don't think it's as impactful. Just the amount of time that you have. I think if player load was the big issue, and that they meant it, like, it would be, okay, how do we address it during the season? Not these 20-minute stretches. I
feel the same way. And then the other reason why I like it, and I don't know if anyone said this with you yet, but I'm a big fan of the clock in college soccer. I love the transparency of one ref not arbitrarily getting to decide when the game ends. I like that both teams know exactly how much time is left. I think we all know that it could be better at when to stop the clock, when not to. I always viewed overtime as like a natural stoppage time for games that
that's a good point.
Don't get it. So that's one reason I liked it. I think if we continue to not have overtime, I would like to see stricter rule enforcement about how the clock is operated, so it stops more quickly, so there is more actual playing time. But that's another reason why I miss it.
That's true. You can. I said this in the 90 minutes. In some of the games that I watched, I was, again, I always use the word intentional, but I do think there were coaches out there who were intentional about killing the clock.
For sure.
Or bleeding it. I'm not saying that they were doing anything nefarious or other, but when they made substitutions and how long those substitutions took, the throw-ins and all the nonsense that goes around throw-ins and how much time goes off the clock there, right? And then dead ball fouls. Like, how long do you take to get the ball back in play? Like,
one of the other. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is something that I'm pretty passionate about. The other area that this is created is I think referees have a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a lot more say in trying to read intentions. And I don't like that. So, like, for example, in our game, it was like the third game of the year, we were playing against Central from Iowa, and it's one of those games that I think we had, shots were all us. They were playing for a tie, and I don't knock it because they're good. They were so organized on the day. And we scored a goal with, like, I don't know, 2 minutes left in the game. And then we got a yellow card for milking the time, taking a throw in with like 90 seconds left in the game. When the previous, 88 minutes, when the ball would go out for a goal kick, 45 seconds, a minute would run off the clock. And I don't quite see how. So now that we scored a goal, we're allowed to be dinged for a yellow card for wasting the game when it happened for 88 minutes prior and it didn't. So I think referees have a little bit too much say in trying to read intent with that. And there should be more consistency.
Just to be clear, I'm in 100% agreement with you. Like, I mean, this stuff applied from the moment the whistle blows. I'm not saying like, oh, towards the end. No, I mean, you can determine a team. I always say you can determine how a team wants to get the ball in play or how fast they do by look at the first goal kick.
Yep.
Is the goalkeeper looking for the ball? Is he running for the ball? Is he placing it down as quickly as he can? Or is he coming up with all the nonsense? Like, that to me dictates a lot. Like, that to me says a lot, right?
Yep.
And again, maybe it's just old school. I don't know. I watch this stuff. But I think that sort of thing should be nipped in the bud from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I'd be perfectly fine if you said, you get, just like a goalkeeper gets six seconds, supposedly that's never enforced,
Yep.
to have the ball in his hands. Throw-ins, you got 6 seconds to get the ball in play, or otherwise you turn it over. I'm okay with that as well.
I wish these rules existed in 2019 when I didn't feel that we were like more skilled than most of our opponents, so we would have had a better opportunity. I mean, trying to hang on for another 20 minutes is a significant period of time.
Yeah. So anyhow, I could definitely, I'm with you there. Like, it's just the sort of thing that drives me. And I could go down on the referee thing, right? Like, I'm convinced that on long throws, like, so much illegality happens in just these, teams that take advantage of long throws and have the guy who can whip it in. I mean, moving up 20 yards to get a throw so that they're close to, like, that sort of thing has got to stop in my book. But
I agree.
What do I know? I just sit here, wear hats from teams that cause me nightmares. Hey, let me know what are your thoughts about the extension of preseason now that you get the 6 or 8 days or whatever it is?
In spring season?
Yeah.
Yeah, any more time is a win. I echo the same sentiments that I think other coaches have said, where anything extra we get, we're happy about. I also agree that I think most teams would trade 8 days for one extra game. In a second. But we take the wins where we can get them. I really believe in that preseason should have been extended for that acclimatization period.
I can't say that word, but yes.
Yeah, neither can I. That was the best I've ever done it, and I still think it was pretty bad. Again, to go back to what we said 5-10 minutes ago, when it's convenient, player wellness and safety and student-athlete experience is cited, but when it causes schools to pay more money,
inconvenient, no, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I know you and Dayon talked about it, but for anybody who does watch this, if you haven't seen Brandon Bianco's Twitter thread,
I got to do that.
Data on this, it's pretty eye-opening. I mean, over the course of 4 years, a spring sport like lacrosse, who often gets compared to soccer, they get another playing season than fall sports that aren't in football. So
it is remarkable. I didn't know. I mean, until I saw that, I made a note because I got to do this. Maybe I'll just even post it, record it, or record it scrolling through so that people have time to go through it. It is remarkable to me, the difference between like sports. 30, like, I think the number was like 32 days. Like, how is that? How do you justify that? Like, seriously, like, how would you justify that?
The weirder part too is that, some spring sports who they advance in their postseason in like so they're on campus after graduation. And that's just like now the school's paying for them to be there. It's the same thing as if they were paying for us to be
on
there.
the back end. For them,
Right.
it's on the back end. For
Exactly.
soccer, it's on the front end. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't quite seem right, and it's funny to me that it takes a guy like Brandon just to put that data in front of us to show what we've all kind of felt for a while. But I mean, it's right there, it's punching us in the face of how unequal it is.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just that's like the Overton window, right? Like somebody's got to bring it up to change the conversation around it, or at least to sort of get it in front of people's minds, because then they might not happen this year, but guys like Coach Bianco, like constant or bringing it up and talking about it, and sort of what I try to do in these interviews. Like, people will start to be aware and then suddenly be like, well, why is this the story? And then put pressure.
Yeah,
right? I think that's
absolutely.
All right, so let's go into talk a little bit about the season. You went 15-5-2. You won the MIAC after you beat obviously a very good Gustavus team, 2-1. I'm curious, did you knew you had obviously you have a good team. That start of the season doesn't go your way so much. It's a little rough. Was there a time when you thought after that, or maybe even during, like, man, we have the capability of going all the way in this, to go to the tournament, to go to the NCAAs? Was there a point, or were you always of the belief that was the case?
I think I was always of that belief. My associate head coach, Justin Oliver, who has been with me from day one since I accepted this job, and is a huge reason why we've gotten better. The night we lost to North Park, we were at our hotel in Chicago. We were, the way our minds work, we immediately start thinking, like, how many games can we drop and potentially still be in the conversation for an at-large, which is not the right way to think at all. But after we finished wasting about 90 minutes talking about that after 4 games in the season, he said something along the lines of, like, it doesn't matter. We're going to win the MIAC tournament anyway and make a run. And I said, you know what? I agree. Like, I think this team, like, this year will do that. I didn't think the team the year before was capable of doing that. When we lost to Carleton the year before in the MIAC final at home, we were just a bunch of – that was the first time in like 20 games that we looked like a bunch of kids playing against a really good Carleton team. And last year, with how much experience we returned, even when we lost, we were never like that fazed by it, because we played pretty good in those losses. And that, like, I'm way more concerned with how we're playing than the results that accompany. And to be clear, I would rather win ugly than like lose pretty, to be very clear. But if we're happen to be winning ugly 3-4 games in a row, we got some stuff to figure out, because that isn't conducive to being just consistent throughout the entire season. So I think we felt good about our chances most of the year, and those losses didn't really do anything to derail us, because even within them, when you really get down to the nitty gritty and how, like, the plays that lost those games, there were some really, really spectacular individual players on my team who had some very uncharacteristic mistakes that, being a betting man, you don't bet on to happen twice in a row or 2 times in a season. So we felt good about our chances. And, we're one of the things that I love about our conference is, if you get to the conference championship, chances are you're playing against a team that's going to make you better for the NCAA tournament. I think both us and Gustavus got that benefit. We said going into the game, this is a Sweet 16 Elite 8 level match, and certainly that proved to be the case a couple weeks later. But to get that kind of tune-up before the tournament was great, because when we were able to go down and come back and win, and then get by our first game, and then play North Central, who was also undefeated, and we were down at halftime just like Gustavus. I mean, when you go on the road and beat 2 undefeated teams that are ranked in the top 10, and you come from behind in both games, you start to believe, like, all right, there isn't really anything, like, nothing's going to scare us. And And so we started to believe that, this really, even more so than 21, like we could get to a Final Four, we could do something. And, it wasn't in the cards this year. Made the mistake of scoring first against Gustavus, which is the team who scored first the last like 3 or 4 times we played, with the exception of the regular season win over us, hasn't really held on. The team who concedes first can come back and win. So we got to let them score first next year.
Yeah.
But
just that kickoff, just get it out of the way.
Exactly.
That kickoff, let them drive down, score. Okay,
Exactly.
let's play now. That's great. No, you're right. Like you. I mean, Gustavus twice in those 3 weeks, in those 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Gustavus twice in North Central, and then in your regular season, you're wrapping up. I mean, like you said, Augsburg was really good. Like, I mean, that's just prep,
Yeah.
Like that to me is just prep and what you do, and especially going into the tournament.
For
It's
sure.
It's a shame. Obviously, I understand why, but it's a shame that you and Gustavus crossed paths again in Chicago.
Yeah,
right? It was almost like a different bracket or somehow where you could have met. I think
for sure. I'm just happy that committee did a good job of not putting us in like the same pod. And if you have conference rematches in the Sweet 16, I mean, whenever you play the same team a third time, it means both you were good. It means
yeah. I'm not taking that away.
Conference tournament, and you did something right to get a chance to play again. And I mean, we certainly wish we could have edged them in pens and kept going, but they were a really good team. And
I'm impressed, Gustavus, the way they play as well. Like
for sure. They're a very, very strong team.
Hey, you mentioned them before, just because I try to highlight players. Like, how big of it? How important was Victor Gallman to your team, to your program? Maybe you could talk about him.
Yeah, Victor is a very, very special player at this level. I don't think there are many guys that are more complete as a player than him. It's funny when he came here, his older brother Luca, who, as I mentioned before, very, very good player in his own right. And when Luca would say someone is good, it really meant that they were good because he didn't dish out many compliments very often. And when his brother decided to come here, he came to my office and he told me, like, Victor is going to be the best player in the conference. And I said something to the effect of, like, as a senior, like, that's good. And Luca responded, like, no, like, next year as a freshman, he'll be the best player in the conference. And I was
awesome.
Like, okay.
My brother's saying that too, right? Like,
I'll believe it when I see it. And he missed the first semester that COVID year because it was all remote. So he came out in the spring, and we had this 5-a-side tournament, the first practice, after he won the beep test, and then he dominated in the 5-a-side tournament. And me and my associate head coach Justin just kind of looked at each other and we were like, I think we got a player. And he's great. He's surrounded with a lot of really good players too. But he's a very, very hard worker. I think it's a lot of fun seeing him get the awards that he gets because he really does earn them. It's not just a talented guy who gets votes from other coaches. He puts in the work in the off season and is always playing. I think we got some other special players as well that should be in the conversation for All-American awards and whatnot. But I think if you ask other coaches that watch us play or play against us, Victor's kind of the one that in the midfield, at least, they really have to game plan for. And I think Shea Bechtel up top is another one that I think
I like
really
him as well.
wreaks havoc on people.
I was just Victor Goldman was one of my top 30 players that I watched, and the reason I will say, like, you watch one of your games, and I always look for, hey, it's almost like, who's that guy? Like, there's that one where you're just kind of like at a different level for whatever reason, whether it's skill or whether it's just sort of presence or whatever. And he was the first one I noticed, like, who is that guy? Because
for sure.
He to me he's that guy that everybody sort of, I don't want to say revolves around, but You could tell, like, just again, presence, his ability, all these things. I think there were a lot of play. Everyone just sort of looks like this is the guy, right?
Yep.
And I'm just
No,
really impressed.
he's definitely
Yeah.
a very important piece of,
Yeah, yeah.
of what we're doing here.
All right, so I got a couple more questions, and you can get on with your cold chili day in Minnesota. What are your plans for the spring? Like, what do you do? Is it more technical? Is it more tactical?
So I would say that, especially in Minnesota, we spend a lot of time indoors, and we have nice indoor facilities. We have a dome like 5 minutes off campus that the guys can go to and play every week if they want. But currently we get 16 practices.
Mm-hmm.
In the last practice I ran with them was, the November. So the last thing that I want to do is try to overcoach in the spring, because a big element and a big component to why people come to St. Olaf is we have one of the top study abroad programs in the country. So we have like 7 or 8 guys that are abroad this semester that will miss our entire spring season.
And that's normal, though, right?
That's very normal.
That's normal. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm very, very supportive of it.
Yeah.
I think it's an incredible opportunity for them. And
I would go.
Same. And I have regrets about not doing it myself when I was in college. And that affects our numbers. And all this to say, we don't just roll the balls out and play by any stretch of it, but we do play a lot because the guys. I mean, we want to. I want our practices to be 2 things. I want them to be fun, and I want them to be very, very competitive. We keep track of winners and losers and everything that we do, and because the guys, they like having bragging rights over each other, and
of course,
and who doesn't like making fun of whoever lost on the day?
So
we like doing that, and the spring is really just if I had to encapsulate into one word, I would say we try to make it as competitive as possible. And we can do that. We still find the right moments to hop in and point things out that are conducive to the tactics that we want to run. But we really just like to compete and play a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Last one for you. What does your recruiting class look like for? I guess it would be 2023, the fall. Are you done? Are you what kind of players do you got?
We're almost done. I'm looking for probably 2 more guys. We have 6. I understand you still have some eligibility.
I don't know if I do, but we'll find some.
If you can make the switch from goalie to defender, then we'll have that conversation.
I can do definitely. Now I just got the beep test thing. We got to talk about that.
We have 6 guys currently committed, and I'm really excited about them. They're kind of a mix from all over. We have only 1 guy from Minnesota currently. We have 3 guys coming from the Chicago area, 1 from Nebraska, 1 from Iowa, really all over. But we think they address some immediate needs and also provide some much needed high level depth at some other positions. Because it's interesting. I mean, we return 11 starters off all 11 off our Sweet 16 team, which I don't think many teams do that. So I think on one hand, I think one of the reasons why I'm really excited about these guys is, we don't lie to kids to get them to come here and tell them one thing and do another. We're very transparent with.
You're honest? Oh my God! Holy smokes!
We return a very talented team, and we think all these guys are at a level that they're going to be competing with the guys that were starting at those positions last year. And should they win the position, then it'll be theirs. One thing that people don't understand about our team last year. I mean, we returned 10 starters off our Sweet 16 team last year. So on the surface, it doesn't look like a team that is itching for freshmen to break through. And the 2 players who led our team in minutes played last year were 2 freshmen. So if you're good enough, then you'll be on the field. And we think the guys that are coming in are going to be pushing the guys that we currently have. And if they don't, if it ends up that the freshmen aren't quite good enough right away, then I think it's a good situation where a lot of the guys who would be, in quotes, ahead of them in the depth chart would be seniors, and there's more of a direct path for them to potentially after they graduate to slide in. But it's the kind of depth that I think we need in order to take that next step from being a Sweet 16 team to trying to becoming a Final Four team, and we're excited about it.
I just thought of another one, especially dealing with freshmen and what's your how many on your roster do you think you use in a season? I'll just say the regular season. Tournament's different, I get that, but the regular season, how many do you think you use?
So we usually carry anywhere from like 29 to 32 guys. I think has kind of been the number in each of our given years, with anywhere from 3 to 4 goalkeepers. So we always have enough to go 11s of practice, and then have some room for the inevitable injuries at sideline guys for bits and pieces at a time. I would say in the closer games early in the year, I'm not looking at the box scores ahead of me, but I would say anywhere from 13 to 16 guys is the number I play in those games. I think early on in the year it errs on the side of larger numbers, as we're trying to see who can help us more. And as the season wears on, that number kind of dwindles a little bit to figure out, who are the guys you really are relying on in crunch time. But I would say I think next year, I say this now in February, but I think with the depth that's coming in, that I really believe that we can be a team that can comfortably play 16 to 20-ish guys a game. Whether we do that or not, I have no idea.
Different story.
We'll see how it plays out. But having the ability to feel like that confident right now is different than where we've been in previous years. So I'm certainly happy about that.
That to me is like the legitimate discussion about depth, right? Like, you don't. I'm sure you're like a lot of coaches, right? Where you put guys in to test them, but you also put guys in to succeed, right? Yeah. And you don't want to put somebody who's not ready in, because that could have a bigger impact, right?
Sure.
They stink and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm always curious about that number, because it just says, hey, how deep can you go in your roster and still think these kids can succeed in their positions or wherever you throw them?
I think Jay said something to you in your interview with him about like something along the lines of you only have depth if you use it. I agree with that, and that's where I really believe that when you are more confident about being able to go into 18-20, that's very different than like 14-15. Because you multiply that 15-20 minutes by 18 games. That's a lot of minutes you take off people's legs over the course of the season. So.
And then you build for next year, right?
Sure.
You're building those guys. Hey, you know what it's like. You don't have to. This isn't. If now I have to use you for 90 minutes, right?
Absolutely.
So, hey, this was fantastic. Even though you're battling Bishop, I won't hold that against you. I really do appreciate you taking the time. I really enjoyed our conversation, and like I said, I'm a big fan of you guys, the way you play, and really impressed with the talent that I see you guys, and would love to get out there to see your field, because in your stadium, because it is, if you haven't had a chance to watch or check it out, it is it's an impressive place.
Well, on that note, I'll tell you the game that you should come to, first game of the year next year. We are hosting the defending national champs, UChicago.
Oh my gosh!
So if there's a home game to come to, it's probably that one. So.
Wow, you're not like you're diving right in. Holy smokes!
Yeah, we want to play really good teams and test ourselves, and we got a really strong schedule again next year that we're looking forward to. But listen, I really appreciate you having me. I've been looking forward to this. I really, really appreciate everything you do for D3 Soccer.
Thank you.
I love watching these interviews, and I look forward to continuing to watch more.
Maybe we can connect in the summer before the season, just to sort of get your assessment for the upcoming season.
I would love that. I would love that.
I won't occupy so much time in those, but
again,
thanks a lot. And I am going to mark my calendar to fly out there.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Minnesota.
It's a great place, especially like in the fall. I mean, it gets a little murky in November. It starts getting a lot colder, but like honestly, through September and October, it is beautiful weather to be able to play your season in. And I mean, we have an awesome facility to come out, and our live stream is fantastic, but it's better to see in person.
Yeah, the live stream too. Like it's like you're one of the top in the country. Like it's really good. Different cameras, like multiple cameras, not just the one. Like it's fantastic. Last question. Have you gone ice fishing yet?
I have.
Oh my gosh.
I am not a big fisher. Or fisherman. See, I don't do it. I don't even know what the right word is to use. Not a big fan of it. I would rather golf in the summer.
The wilds. I'll go golfing
simulator.
with you.
I would way rather do that than fish. But I have some friends who fishing is like the ultimate get away from the office move for them, and it's probably a lot more affordable than golfing. So maybe I should turn into it. But I have been ice fishing. It's fun for like a day for me, but I don't think I could do more than that.
I was invited. I used to go there for business a lot. I was there once a month, and they were like during the summer they'd be like, oh, well, when you come out to Minnesota, we'll go ice fishing. And there was nothing about those invitations that remotely made me think like, wow, that's a good idea. No,
the first time I was in a car that like drove on the lake, I was very, very unstable about it. I was not comfortable with it. And then I realized very quickly that that's just the norm. You take a forward 150 out on the ice and it's very normal. But not for me. Not for me.
All right, Coach.
Awesome.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Have a great one.
If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer.